Welcome to the Caribbean Edge. My name is Dawn Wilson. I'm your host tonight, as tonight's episode is about brotherhood. And I do have 4 gentlemen with me tonight who are here to tell you what brotherhood means to them. So welcome tonight, Mr. Franklin Myrtle.
Good evening.
Nice to have you.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure.
And we also have Rowan Walker. Welcome, Mr. Walker.
Glad to be here.
Awesome. And Mr. Corey Milton, welcome, welcome.
Thank you very much. Glad to be here.
And we also have Arianus Johnson, HA.
There you go. Let's just go with that. Glad to be here. Thank you for having me on the show.
So tell the viewers how we say your name.
It's Arianus. It's Arianus.
Arianus. But he gave me a pass to call him AJ.
I did.
And I so appreciate it because I swear I mess up names, and I don't know, being from the islands, a lot of Jamaicans, we tend to do that. My friends are always messing with me about it. So welcome. Brotherhood means something. We did an episode on sisterhood. It just was so important for us to touch this topic because as women, we also want to understand this relationship. But before we get into it, I want each of you to take time just to tell us who you are, what you do, and whatever you want the world to know about you. So let's start with you, Franklin.
Okay. Good evening, world, and good evening, everyone in the panelists. My name is Franklin Myrtle, originally from White Plains, New York. Haitian American descendants. In terms of college degree, I have a degree in computer programming, but I never used it because I wanted to work for IBM. They picked up and went overseas, so that I didn't get a chance. My parents said I couldn't sit around. I had to go back to school. So I went back to school. I became an ultrasound sonographer. 2 years later, I became a vascular tech. 4 years later, I was a specialist. So when I left the medical field, I went into fashion. Granted that I'm fashion royalty, my mother being a fashion seamstress and a fashion stylist. My father was more like a perfectionist. So long story short, that's where I belong from the beginning. But as many may know, from a Caribbean household, you either could be 2 things. My mother would say to me, you could either be a thief and a liar, or you could save lives. And I was like, wait, Mom, you want me to go steal? She's like, no, boy, figure it out. So a thief and a liar, more like, no disrespect to those who are lawyers. Thief and a liar is considered as a lawyer. Saving lives will be a doctor. So that's when I could find a job from the IBM with a computer world. That's when she told me that. So that's when I went back to school and I became an ultrasound tech and as well as vascular. Currently, I am a fashion stylist and I'm also a casting director. The world can know me as Smiley because I love to smile so much with a beautiful soul.
Well, thank you so much for that. And I know that Hello Beautiful named you the most beautiful celebrity around the world during New York Fashion Week, correct? Most
Correct.
stylish and beautiful celebrity. Wow.
Correct. Yeah, in 2020, February 2020, which is like a year ago, I was named the most stylish, the most beautiful, most stylish celebrity around the world through New York Fashion Week by HelloBeautiful.com.
Thank you. And you have sent us some amazing photos. I'm going to show them off in the Caribbean Edge group as well. You love colors, and I love that as well. And with a daughter that just entered the fashion world, it's an honor to meet you and have you here to tell us what Brotherhood is about.
Well,
So welcome.
Yeah, thank you. I love colors due to the fact that I model. When I was a model, I modeled for various designers. We're talking about the Sean John, Ralph Lauren, D Square, Alex Galenga, One Man Collection, just to name a few. And they all have various styles and different textures. And that's why I was like multiple colors like that. Plus, hey, my parents from the island, so it's different. Granted, I'm really Sicilian Haitian American, but I claim myself as Haitian American.
Yeah, and you touched on something about them Caribbean parents always pushing us to be lawyers or doctors.
Yes.
The world has changed so much,
Yeah.
like that's not the only careers out there anymore, island people. We're gonna have to change some of that. And let's hear from AJ.
Oh, okay.
Welcome once again, and tell us about you.
All right. Well, originally I'm from a small town called Noonan, Georgia, but was raised in College Park. Both of my parents, like I said, are Afro-American here. Both of them from a small town. And I am the oldest of 5 siblings. And we're very spaced out. My youngest sister being 20, my other one being 25. Like our ages are really, really spaced out. So what about me? I went to school. Actually, funny you say that. Funny, went to school to become a doctor, but ended up going into aviation. I'm an aviation instructor, and I teach aviation mechanics at a college in Gwinnett. From there, I also own a home inspection business as well. With entrepreneurship in hand and also in education, that's what I do. That's in a nutshell. That's what I'm gonna say about me for right now.
Ooh, for right now. So having all those siblings must be very interesting.
Yes, yes.
Especially in the different age groups,
Yes.
different sexes, right?
So spaced out. I definitely could talk about. That's why I think this is very important. Not only talking about brotherhood that we're gonna go into, but just the brotherhood, even in the camaraderie of a family with males. So glad we're talking about that today.
Awesome. Well, welcome again. And Mr. Corey, tell us about you.
I'm from another small town as well, out of Augusta, Georgia. I've been in Atlanta, Georgia since 2001. I am a college advisor. I also work at the aviation college to impact and change lives every day. And I like what my man Franklin said, it's about changing lives. If you're not changing lives and impacting families, then what are you doing? My mom told me that. You have to be doing something. I'm very, very excited to talk about brotherhood tonight because I think it's something that's very much needed in our community. A lot of things are thought and not said, and we need to talk about that. I also, outside of my profession, which I've been doing for, I think, 14 years as a college advisor, I own 2 nonprofits where I mentor young men through football, sports background. And I played football at Georgia Southern University. And as we all know, football is a universal love across the world, across the country. And I came up with a great ruse, if you will, to get these guys' attention, to be able to mentor them. If you just walk up to somebody and start talking all this good stuff, today's generation, they're not so open to listening right away. So you have to come up with like a ruse. Like, they love football, but in football, it teaches you life skills, brotherhood skills, how to work together, lean on each other. So subsequently, they learn good values through football without even knowing it, and I'm a believer in you do something, I think it says 21 times, it becomes a habit. So we teach them basically, we got this class we do on Friday nights. We call it a class called How to Be. I know it sounds very simple, but how to be, a lot of people just don't know how to be. And for myself, I grew up an only child. My mother was murdered when I was 15 years old, and my dad was in the streets. So I didn't know how to be, I latched on to whatever looked attractive, and a lot of that wasn't good for me, and I want to be able to pay it forward to the young men in the world today, because they may not tell you, but they may be walking that same path. And I want to be able to be available to those guys.
Wow. Thank you, Corey. So nice to have you. And sorry about your mom. And thank you so much for the route that you've taken as far as being somewhat of a mentor, coach to our youth as well. So important. And from the bottom of our hearts as a Caribbean family, we certainly thank you for that, because that is so needed and so important, especially with the topic that we are talking about tonight. Oh my gosh, I'm already getting teary-eyed. I'm not supposed to get teary-eyed on this, but kids is in my heart. So, just hearing your story is so touching, and to see that what you're doing from that hurt and pain is certainly to be commended. So thank you for sharing that with us tonight.
Thank you.
Mr. Rowan Walker, thank you. Welcome. What do you want the world to know about you and why you're joining this episode tonight?
Okay, well, welcome. Hi, and welcome to everyone. My name is Rowan Walker. I'm of Jamaican background. I was born in Jamaica. That's kind of central to a lot of things about me. I came to the United States. I came here for college, went to HBCU here in Texas, graduated with a degree in engineering, worked in the oil and gas industry, have worked in the oil and gas industry pretty much my whole career in a number of different positions here in the lower 48 in Alaska, overseas for several years. I'm a father. I have 2 kids who are both college age, going to school here in Houston. And that's also pretty central to a lot of things about me and things that I do. Here in Houston, I'm involved in a couple of different organizations. A big part of what I do is with a running organization called Black Men Run. And that's, I think, as we get into talking about Brotherhood, I think a lot of the things that we do in that group will probably feed into some of my discussions. So I'm excited to, I guess, be part of this discussion and to hear and participate in what some of the other fellas have to say.
Awesome, welcome. Very interesting name for that organization, Black Men Run. Can't wait to dive into that. One of the questions I do have for you guys is, it's Black History Month, and it is also Reggae Month for us Jamaicans as well, who are so proud of our country and heritage. But for you all individually, just start telling us what Black History Month means to you, how it's impacting you, and tell us, the first question is, what is Brotherhood for you? So let's go back to Franklin.
Well, Brotherhood for me and to me, you looked at it as someone who has your back, your side, your front, all around, because growing up in White Plains, New York, where I mainly from White Plains, New York, but I really grew up here in South Florida. So when I first came to South Florida, like it was 1991, granted I'm Haitian American, and I had back then, it just, I don't want to make it seem like it's an animosity, but you had the Haitians that was on one side, you had the Jamaicans, you had the Americans. I had more Jamaicans friends, more Bahamians friends, more than I did an Americans friend, consider the fact they had an issue with that. So we kind of like form a brotherhood together. It's like, okay, one mess with you, they mess with all of us. And consider the fact that my brother and I, we both are New Yorkers, meaning that we speak with a New York accent. It was harder for us to be in the South. Granted, like we was having an issue from left. And when we formed that brotherhood there, we had each other back. If it was 4 of us, we had $1. Everybody had a quarter. Okay, we have each other back. We help each other with homework. So my brother, who was the more skillful one at sports, and then he had a scholarship at Kentucky State University, ended up going to the NFL. So whatever we didn't understand about football, like Brother Corey said earlier, whatever I didn't understand about football, he would help me with that. And I've always been great with computers and math, so I would help them in that aspect. And somebody else who was good at something else, like my friend who was good at chess, he was helping them. So brotherhood means everything to me. We all we got, and we stick together.
Thank you so much. Corey, let's switch to you about Brotherhood, Black History Month, and the youth that you're helping. I know sports is so significant for children. It's, I have a child that grew up in the sports arena, volleyball, and I can't tell you all the sisterhoods that she met through that. So I can certainly relate to all the sports parents watching. but also parents that may have kids that are going through a challenging time, you know, based on your experience and some of the examples that you see every day. Tell us what brotherhood means to you, Black History Month, everything going on. And of course, your passion for what you do certainly seeps through.
Thank you. Yeah. First of all, Black History Month for me is a responsibility. I think people read about Black History Month and it's like reading The Cat in the Hat if it's not applied. You know, I feel like you have a responsibility as a citizen, a Black citizen, to do your part because what they done is the essence of Black history. The things they done so we could have today and stand in some of the arenas we stand in today was because of what was done before us. And I don't think that people take that serious enough. So therefore, my job is to make sure that I'm doing my part and leading by example, which kind of segues into brotherhood. Brotherhood, as my grandfather would always tell me, as I was raised with my grandparents, my parents was very young. And my grandparents taught me all the time, brotherhood is not just, as my grandfather always say, a bed of roses, you know, hey, I'm your brother, I love you. You know, those things are also very, very important. But the other things that are important about brotherhood is being an example for your brother, you know, hold him accountable, teach him how to be, you know, bring him up to speed on his ignorance, you know, how he treat his wife. You cannot be okay with your brother being a butt to his wife in front of his kids. And those things are difficult conversations to have. And people generally stray away from difficult conversations, but the difficult conversations are what we need for growth, you know, and they may not be able to take it right away, but over time they'll look back after bumping their head another time, maybe not with you or someone else witnessing this, you know, they'll think twice about it. I am very direct, you know, with my guys. And I always tell them I'm too real to be misunderstood. So I'm gonna tell you exactly what I believe you should be doing and what you shouldn't be doing. Now you're not gonna like it, but it's what you need to hear, you know. As far as brotherhood, I'm really big on rewriting narratives. You know, there's so many bad narratives in our communities nowadays about what you should and shouldn't do. Men shouldn't cry. Men shouldn't do this. Women should do. No, I teach my guys what's right. I do something that they don't hear all the time. I tell grown men, I love them. And you wouldn't believe how impactful that is to see a grown man receive that. You know, he get all clammy and shaky because that's not an everyday thing for him. But we want them to understand you can be sensitive, you can be passionate, you can be real with yourself. It's okay. But you know, from what we watch on TV, what we hear on the radio, what's in the rap music about a man is not a man. And I'm not meaning to get religious, but you got to be cognizant to know that the book says everything in the end days, everything that's right is going to be wrong. Everything that's, you know, correct is going to be incorrect. Women will be clothed, but they'll be dressed, but they'll be naked. I mean, so those things, everything is backwards. So I have a pressure on me every day when I'm in the presence of 175 men and women, because I have a men's group and a women's group, and I have to mentor men and women. And as you know, those dynamics are different. They have different issues, you know, because now you're dealing with a gender thing. And to add to that whole point, dealing with the women has made me a better mentor for the men because you need patience and understanding and sensitivity. I wasn't always a guy I am today. I walked a path, and my experiences have embodied me with those type of skills. And I look at things all the time. If you wanna know how far you can go, you got to look backwards, where you come from. And so I tell my guys, work together, love each other, be there for each other, feed your brother, clothe your brother. I coach a football team, and it's an amateur football team as adults. And what we did something this past weekend that was very astronomical. In order to people have to, they give requirements for you to play. You better come to practice, or you better pay your money, or you better do this. I had one requirement to play in the game. One requirement: no jeans, no t-shirts, no ball caps. And one of the craziest narrative guys believe you only wear dress clothes to church. No, you do not. But then you go to a job interview with holy jeans because nobody is teaching. It's just ignorance. So I had them dress up, and I can share some pictures with you about how they look. They looked, and they were just so amazed and enamored to be able to dress up for not church. It was just something, and that's probably small to some people, but for me, it changed lives. Guys had to go out and buy dress clothes. I mean, could you believe that? Dress clothes, and I just think that something that small can be very, very impactful to a young man's life. And we're far beyond affecting somebody's life. We're trying to impact families, generations. So if you teach one, he'll teach another. That's what we're trying to do.
Wow. Thank you for that. And yes, sometimes you don't even realize when you're doing something, the impact that you're making. So we're so glad you're here, and you are just as black and white as possible. And we appreciate that. A couple of things that touch me, and the guys can chime in whenever as well. But yes, we don't say I love you enough, especially for those of us that come from broken families. We don't know how to hug each other. We don't know how to express that love. So it's so important to have role models that are doing that, and that parents themselves, or like you being a coach, that we're breaking those cycles and showing people, yeah, somebody really does care about you. We did an episode on human trafficking as well. So that came to mind for me, because a lot of people that get, these kids that run away and become victims is because no one told them that they cared about them or loved them. So very critical that we take note as a society, as a Black society, as men and as women, as parents and coaches and teachers, and the list goes on. And having those difficult conversations, because I have girlfriends that have difficult conversations with me as well. So it's nice to hear that you're having those conversations. And in the arena you mentioned as well about, why is a guy beating on his wife and you look the other way, or his girlfriend? Why are you verbally abusing her? And a lot of brothers look away or they laugh about it, So having men be honest with you and sometimes walk away from those friendships because you don't want to be around it is so critical, I think. So guys, anything you guys have to say on what we've discussed so far?
Yeah, I wanted to add to what he was saying that I think is so prevalent and true about, not only just to be about the accountability, because if you look at any relationship specifically with males, one of the things I think he said that was so important, was key, was that he says he tells the guys, I love you. One of the things that we have to talk about when it comes to men is also, and I think Corey and a lot of guys can testify, is the negative side of if it is not done right, if the relationships are not done right. So with that being said, let's think about it for a second. He said, I tell them I love you. Everyone, even from a gang-related situation, everybody's still looking for a sense of belonging or love, right? That what the gang or what the gang gave you is a family, right? They gave you a brotherhood. Although their objective is wrong, it leads down this wrong road, there could be a good gang you hang with or a good friendship. And so I think that was something he said that really latched on to me, is that he established with the group, not only do we have standards, parameters, but I love you, and I love you enough to tell you the truth. And I think with that brotherhood, that's what's so important, is I love you I love you so much that I got to tell you the truth, that you got a nasty attitude, that you're lazy. Now, men relate to each other slightly different in some aspects of how we talk to each other. And so I think that's what Corey was saying, that's what made him so well-rounded, because he mentors both sides of the field, what I'm saying, for women and men. And so in the camaraderie of men, we talk to each other slightly a little different sometimes it's got a little edge to it, a little punch to it. But once a brother know you love him, it may come out, even if it come out wrong, I know he loved me. I know when the rubber meet the road, he has shown time and time again this brother loved me. So when he tell me this, I might not like it, but I got to receive it. Even if I don't receive it right now, but I got to come to grips with the truth.
So true. How about you, Rowan?
Yeah, so quite a bit of what you were saying resonates. Similarly, as I was talking about with our running group, there are a lot of aspects, I think, of that brotherhood relationship that come into play. There are things of like commitment and discipline. When in a group, if you tell someone that, hey, we're meeting on Saturday to go for a 16-mile run, you made that commitment and guys are going to show up. Things like when you're out on a long run and after 8, 9, 10 miles, guys start getting tired. We have a motto in the group that no man left behind. So, even if you're 2 miles ahead of the group, guys will come back and check on guys who might not be as fast or might not be as strong to pull them along. So a lot of the elements of brotherhood, helping folks along, being disciplined and sticking to your word when you say you're going to do things, encouraging and motivating guys, on a long run. But as with the group, so in life, I think a lot of those things do come into play. Especially, I think for guys, when a lot of the things in brotherhood, when you're in team environments, as he mentioned, coaching, or if you're in a running group, or if you're in a fraternity, or if you're in a, kind of any male-dominated group or environment that you're in, I think a lot of these elements do come into play. And as Arianus said, the way that we relate, I think there is a special dynamic that you get into when guys are talking or guys are interacting. It might not always be lovey-dovey, but there's always the understanding that it's coming from a place of caring and a place of trust and a place of wanting the other brother to improve and to basically be raising his level, so that you really do care for him, you really do love him, and you do want to see him getting better.
Thank you. Now, let me ask you this from a woman's perspective. So there are a lot of brotherhoods or friendships or bond that we simply don't get. Like you spend so much time with your male friends, whether it's sports or you hang out more with them than you do with us. I don't have this issue. I'm just talking for women in general. What do you want women to understand about that? Because I can give my perspective, but I really want to know from you guys to share as men, because I think women are going to listen to that.
The better question is, what do you want from us?
What do we want from you? What do women want from you?
Yeah,
that's a whole nother show, Franklin.
That's what we really want to know. That's what we want to know.
Yeah, well, why don't you just share a brief synopsis with us?
Well, so for me, I don't want to answer for the guys, but like I don't think I'm like a typical woman. Like I love sports. I love hanging out with my friends. And that's my me time. I work excessively long hours in healthcare and I run this show and the Caribbean Edge Kids show. So for me, my sports life and my life before COVID, partying and hanging with my girlfriends, which I enjoy so much, would be so different from a relationship with a guy. So I would want a guy to understand that. I understand there's compromise as well, but for my own mental health, those things are important for my sisterhood, for my mental health, for my physical health as well. So that's what I'm saying. When guys are like, every weekend you have to go on the basketball court, why aren't you laying in bed with me, honey, snuggling up with me? The women that do that, or let's go hang out, or they occupy all your time, always plan events. I don't know if these things happen to you guys. I've read it, I've heard it.
Yeah, so I'll take so for example, and I'll go back to kind of the similarity with running. If say on training for a marathon on Saturday mornings, you might be up at 4 o'clock going out for a long run, and that's every Saturday for 16 to 18 weeks. And you will get the questions as to, hey, can we lay in bed one Saturday? And it is just not going to happen for 16 to 18 weeks. You're meeting up with the guys, and you might be driving 50 miles to go run a certain route. And I think part of what's important is understanding that, and it is a two-way street, but part of what's important, I think, from the woman's side is understanding that there are things that are going to be important to us, that periodically there are going to be times when we need to carve out time, either for ourselves or for a commitment that we have made that might be with a bunch of other guys, that for 16 to 18 weeks, whatever the time is, you're going to be meeting up with these 10 guys and going off to do something to accomplish an objective that you have set for yourself. So I think it's important as guys for us to have that time together. There are interactions that we have with other brothers that it's just impossible to have with a woman or with a group of women. The competition and drive that comes out in some of those relationships, the kind of discipline that you build for yourself, that's important for a lot of other things in your life. There's a lot of things that are developed in these relationships with your brothers that hopefully will benefit a lot of other things in your life. So in some ways, hopefully the woman in your life is also going to benefit directly or indirectly from some of these other relationships that you have. Of course, on our side, it's also important that we don't give any cause of doubt, in that there is time that's being carved out also for the woman in your life. However, there must be an understanding that there's going to be things that are important to us, and there's going to be things that we need to be a whole person that will hopefully make what we bring to a relationship even better in the long run.
Yeah. Anyone? I think Corey has something on that.
Very good point, and this is awesome. I mean, this is gonna be far beyond an hour at some point. But I can tell you right now that this is good stuff. We gotta do it again.
Yeah, definitely.
But it to me, is first of all, and I'm speaking for me. Men, sometimes we have terrible balancing. Our balance can be terrible. And I'm gonna speak, guys. No disrespect. I'm speaking for me. I don't know how it works, but I'm gonna go out on a limb and say we do. We have trouble balance. We get caught up in a drive, as Rohan talks about, and forget about the balance. And now you're in an imbalance. But it goes back to value system. It goes back to two things: value systems and need. What Rohan is saying, the wife wants you to lay in bed, more so needs you to lay in bed. But there's a need that the man has as well, and that's connecting with his brothers. And no matter how small or insignificant that need is, it has to be met on both sides of the equation. So now in comes your balance. Now you got to balance that, whether or not making sure that you're giving the wife what she needs for that, maybe not 2 hours, now so an extra hour. But at the same time, in relationships, sometimes a partner will begin to invalidate your need. Like, oh, the boys, those are just the boys. Well, now you invalidate my need. And my need to hang out the boys for that hour is just as powerful as your need for me to rub your feet for an hour that morning. But we have to not invalidate one another's needs. And also, we have to level up the value systems. In couples, a lot of times the value systems are off. What you value, she think is small. What she baking and kitchen, that's small. But it's really not. You can't do that. You have to find a way. Because when you love someone, you have to find a meeting of the minds. Well, what's important to you is just as important to me. But sometimes we lose track of that because everybody's striving for, well, I got to get this done because this makes me feel good. Coaching football makes me feel good. My wife's an architect. She loves building and designing commercial buildings. And I like buildings. I like walking in them. But, you know, what she does, I rather not do. But because she loves it, I have to have those conversations about those things. And I think, again, this is another subject I've taught my young men. Getting into a marriage or a strong relationship is a big deal. Like, you're no longer one. You have to like things, talk about things, go to things, because you're not by yourself anymore. And we come into it, I'm still gonna be the same guy I was when I was dating. Nope, you're not. You're not. And guess what? Neither is she. But we both have to understand that. The value system has to line up. And as my counselor told us, and again, let me get on that narrative. Some men think counseling is bad. No, I think every Black American suffers from PTSD, broken home, bad situation. So therefore, you need, where something comes out or you lose something, you have to replenish it. That's how it works. So therefore, when I go to counseling twice a month, she talks about needs. My wife, and I know y'all get this one. The toilet seat got to be down when I'm done. It got to be down. It got to be down. But that's a need. Don't invalidate that. It's a need. It's a need. I mean, the recycled. I cannot put a water bottle in the garbage. I can't do it. It's a violation. It's a violation.
Flag on the play.
Flag on the play right now.
That's understood.
I could go all day, but my point is, do not invalidate one another's needs and have balance and make the value systems line up.
Yeah, I agree with you. I still don't understand why the seat would have been up anyway, and you would not recognize that it goes in the recycle bin and not
because we've done it all our lives when we're single.
Yeah.
That's why.
There you go.
We're gonna have your wife on here next, but thank you.
That would be good.
But I like that, leveling up, and also your life is really not the same, but then finding that balance between the two of you as well, so you can continue to grow together. That's so important. As long as you're going with the right person, because
right.
With that question comes a matter of trust. And a lot of times I know men hide behind the fact that they're hanging with the brothers and they're probably not really with the brothers. And so that's also important too, because the person you're with has to really trust you. And somehow as women, some women, you need to somehow make us feel comfortable. So sometimes it's your actions that will make a woman feel uncomfortable and not trust you. Because if your brothers never come around, then, that's weird, right? Your brothers should be part of your family too. Your wife or girlfriend would know who they are. And maybe, you're just not right with the right person if you're always hanging with the brothers too. What do you think about that? Are you trying to escape? Have you ever been in that situation where you're just trying to escape and your brotherhood is there for you because things just aren't right at home?
I can't say I have seen it. I can't say it. I know somebody who's experienced. I ain't gonna say it's me, but anyway, I know people who have experienced that, and I've had some of you guys can know, like, this guy always running, bro. Why don't you go home? And it's not because we're trying to attain something. Which I want to go back to what Mr. Walker said, just a little caveat. One of the things I think is important for the other person to know, and I think Corey said as well, that as men, the reason the brotherhood is so important is because we as men, I don't know, depending on what belief systems people believe in, we as men have an innate ability, or we do have it in us for acquisition and that aggressiveness. So what we do also like when we have brotherhood is that it allows us to be aggressive. Now, aggression isn't bad. A lot of people take that in a wrong sense. Aggression isn't bad in a man. Actually, it's quite good if directed the right way. And oftentimes we as men have been so demasculated, which that's a whole nother sermon.
Whoa,
Talking about,
whoa.
oh, wait, okay, wait, hold up, wait,
Whoa.
okay, wait a minute. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir. Hallelujah.
Preach, brother.
We can talk about men being demasculated so that that part of us or that God-given ability for that aggression is really not brought to the forefront in a positive light, okay? So what the brotherhood also allows us is to have that camaraderie, to bring that aggression to acquire or to go run that mile or to really get in there, because we talk to each other and deal with each other slightly different. Now, adding that balance, let me add something to that. Adding that balance must be that we are openly and honestly communicating with our significant other about what our goals and intentions are, okay? So if we do that, we say, hey, look, I'm getting ready for this. I'm getting ready to run this right. It's going to take me about 15 weeks. If we start out there, because one of the things that is a mega need for women is open honesty, right? We've already established that. So if you're open and honest with a mature woman, let me add that, mature, gotta be mature. If you're open and honest with, there's nothing I don't believe that a woman wouldn't work with you with if you're open and honest from the get-go, okay? So I think what has to be said is that with that aggression that we're working on, we're trying to obtain, or we're trying to get that extra degree, or we're trying to start this business, we have to have that camaraderie. It is imperative. Corey said something early, he said it's a need, okay? And the problem with that is if the significant other, if we don't understand each other's needs and values, that's when we get off into stuff we shouldn't be into. And so I just think it's important that we have, and the sisterhood is too, that you got sisters that talk to you, it goes the same way, that encourage you, hey, let's go ahead and get that degree. Hey, you trying to lose weight, baby? The baby is 5 years old. Let's get with it. Like, there's no excuse, okay? There's no excuse. So that's what I want to throw that in there.
Good stuff.
And Franklin, anything from you? You've been rather quiet.
No, I'm just taking notes from the brothers, Brother Corey and then Brother AJ. I don't want to bet Arianus, right? Arianus. Oh, my apologies. So I'm just taking notes. I love the ideas balance. Balance is key to me.
So what are some of the challenges of brotherhood?
For me, the challenge of brotherhood is narrative. It's brainwash. It's what somebody told you that you didn't read for your own understanding. People tell you how to feel, tell you how to dress, what you should wear, what you shouldn't do. And it's embedded in our young people. One of the main things that we deal with is that they say evil enters you from what you hear and what you see. Therefore, they base their whole life off of what they see. I spoke with a young man, 15 years old, and he told me out of his own mouth that he know the path that he's on ends in a blaze of fire, but he's going to enjoy the ride. That's the narrative. That's what he said to me. I know this ends in flames, but I'm going to enjoy the ride. What's enjoyment knowing you're going to die at the end? That's crazy. But it's been embedded in your mind. One of the main things I had to do in college, and I know some of you very intelligent people have heard it before, it was a Willie Lynch letter that you do in college when you talked about how to control slaves at the St. Johns River. Those things are still prevalent these days. People can tell you what they want you to know. They say he without education can be controlled. So you have to educate yourself. And the challenge that I met with is that, and it's every day that people have a Oedipus complex where they want women, their mother or their girlfriend, to take care of them wholeheartedly, like total care. Like I'll give you an example. I'll tell at practices at Central High School, you know what the next question is? Where's that? Google. That's where it's at. So that's what you got. You got to go back. There's a thing called mental laziness. You don't want to use your brain to do the things for yourself because you're sitting back and waiting on other people to do them for you. So the biggest challenge that I run into as with the brotherhood and being a brother is people just take, and not willing to give. And that's because of the life they've been leading for all this time. And it's a hard thing to reconstruct, but over time in the right programs, the right mentorship programs, you can get back on the right track. And it to be honest, 90% of it is ignorance, honestly.
Wow, thank you for that. Rohan, what challenges have you faced with Brotherhood?
Typically, you know, and again, it depends on the group that you're in. Quite a few of the groups that I'm in, we kind of come together around common objectives. And the reason that we're coming together is typically, you know, all of us are aligned towards that objective. So some of the challenges might typically depend on personality. You have someone who, while everyone else might be aiming to reach this objective, you have someone who might be dragging behind a bit. Yes, so there might be just differences in commitment, differences in discipline. Typically, what we try and do, either in the running group or in the fraternity or you know, in any of the other male groups that we're in, we usually try and have such a large group that are committed to whatever objective we're working together, that everyone else kind of gets dragged along. You know, if you're on a football team and the coach has told you, hey, today we're running 20 laps, by the time you get to 15, there might be someone sitting down, someone's gonna run over, grab that person and, you know, by the hand, and everyone might have to run a little bit slower, but we're gonna pull that guy along and make sure he gets his 20 laps in, you know, as we're directed. If we're out running and we say we're running 13 miles today, if we all get done and someone isn't with the group, 2 or 3 brothers are gonna head back and make sure that the person who hasn't finished as yet, that we catch up with them, make sure that they're okay, and run back in with them, pull them along. So a lot of the challenges that we do have, you know, you do have people who are coming from different backgrounds, so they have different motivations. So trying to reach that same group objective takes a little bit of work. You know, so you have some people who kind of enter, you know, with different skill levels, and trying to get everyone towards that same objective is sometimes difficult. But, you know, as I'm sure Corey has experienced, you know, there's, I think a lot of the challenges that we have in Brotherhood can be overcome if there's a sufficient group will and group effort to be willing to work through these things. You know, not, as I said, you know, we have a motto, no man left behind. And as long as that group is willing to do the work, come back for a brother when he needs it, help lift him up when he needs it, be willing to be frank and honest with him when he needs it, that, hey, you're not putting in the work, you know, hey, last Saturday you were supposed to be here, you know, so that's why this week's run or this week's workout is difficult. You know, being honest with him so that he knows where you see him falling down, and hopefully you have enough of a reservoir of goodwill with him, enough of a knowledge on his part that all of this is coming from a place of caring, that it's received in the manner that it should be. And again, you know, that tends to go into so many other parts of life. If you have a brother who might be having some issues with his woman, might be having some issues at work, you're able, if you have, again, sufficient reservoir of goodwill, that you're able to tell him, hey, you know, this is where I see you falling down, or this is where I see you slipping. And, you know, hopefully you're able to either give him some advice or just give him something from a perspective that he's able to take in a manner, because you have enough history or enough goodwill between you that can be received in a manner that will actually help him towards this objective. You know, typically a lot of us are trying to get to different exact destinations, but we're all moving in the same direction. I go back to our running group. We have guys in the running group who are trying to train up so they can run a 5-kilometer run. I'm training up so I can get a Boston qualifying time. There's guys in the group who are training to improve their Boston qualifying time. They've already been to Boston 2 or 3 times. So we're all kind of working towards different objectives, but we're all moving in the same direction. We want to get better, we want to get faster, we want to get stronger. And that group will is kind of moving us all in that same direction. Similarly, as brothers, we're kind of moving to different final objectives, but we all want to move in that same direction. We want to get to be better fathers, better husbands, better our jobs, better relationships in our communities, etc. And a lot of the work that we do in different areas of brotherhood hopefully are moving us into that same direction. And the collective will, if you have brothers in your fraternity, or you have brothers at church, or you have brothers in your running group, wherever, hopefully all of these bits and pieces that we develop in these different groups help move us forward as better men, so that we are moving towards those objectives.
Yeah, thank you. And I can certainly relate to that. In women, we say fixing each other's crown and making sure the rest of the world didn't know it was crooked. So definitely helping, motivating your other teammates to go ahead. And it's not that it's competition, but also it's friendly competition where you encourage each other. We see so many times when we're tearing each other apart versus lifting each other up. So certainly can relate to that. And AJ, I know you had something to say about the challenges of brotherhood.
Yeah, I do. When it comes to brotherhood, especially when it could be a dynamic even in the family. Oftentimes, I think that the brothers alluded to the narrative that goes on with Black men in particular when it comes to family and brotherhood is that they're always devious, or they're always doing something. I think oftentimes that when it comes to even a family, we don't really talk about brotherhood even in that arena. And oftentimes, like I said, for some people who are single family, or me being the oldest, oftentimes when it comes to brotherhood, if it is not demonstrated right in how a family should be directed and how a brotherhood should be, it comes perverted. And so when we have these views in our family of even me, working through and me having a brother, and having that we're so distant as far as our age, that when you grow up and you were supposed to be like the oldest brother, and you're supposed to help with the family and this, that, and other, and then you get a family, and then a dynamic that happens with your siblings where now it's it can be a strain. And so oftentimes for Black people, or oftentimes for Black men, having to relate to a brother has to change and evolve. And no longer is this little brother. Now I have to see my brother as he's a man. You know what I'm saying? It's not big brother. We are 2 men now. And so now I have to take it as he may have some good advice for me to learn from. And I think oftentimes we don't talk about that aspect of brotherhood as well. Not just your peers, but even in the family, how that brotherhood can be affected by that as well.
Good, thank you. Good points. I do want to ask you guys as we wrap up, what are your final thoughts on brotherhood? Is there someone in particular that you want to recognize for their strength of being a strong brother to you? And just what makes that person so special, and what do you want in Corey's case, just the next generations to understand about brotherhood?
Well, as for me, I want to recognize Mr. Coleman. His real name is Kevin Coleman. He is the CEO for the Mr. Coleman Foundation, whereas he teaches it's about mentoring and empowering young men, and I'm one of his board member. I think I want to piggyback a little bit in terms of some of the things some of the challenges of finding brotherhoods. I think some of the challenges that we do find is just that we do have a lot of brothers who are afraid to open up, to talk about what's really bothering them or how they need help. Because I know I've struggled a lot with that, like my earlier days. And Mr. Coleman, as one of my mentors, he helped me with that. And this is the reason why I want to acknowledge him, because he's been doing this for over 20 years. I think if it wasn't for him, I wouldn't be as open as I am right now. So I definitely want to acknowledge him. That's my final thoughts.
Thank you. And thanks for being here tonight to share with us on Brotherhood. And how about you, Rohan? Any final thoughts in what you'd want our younger generation to know, and anyone you want to recognize?
Yeah, so in terms of, I think, the younger generation, one of the things is really understanding a little bit of the emotional component to maturity and brotherhood. We have a lot of young men who, growing up, it is all about how hard you can be. And it's all about, how tough you can be, how much of a girl's man you can be, etc. And, as older brothers, I think, it's incumbent on us to work with the younger generation to understand that, hey, there is a important component of brotherhood that revolves around caring for your brother, around wanting to see him be safe, wanting to see him be healthy, wanting to see him be wealthy, wanting to see him be in good relationships. Some of these more caring components that are, as important as being tough and strong and, sometimes hard-headed. In terms of folks that I'd like to recognize, I'm going to cheat a little bit. I do have two guys, that couldn't leave without recognizing. One of them is my dad. A lot of who I am and what I've done comes from my dad. So when people tell me that, they can see my father in me, that means the world to me. My dad taught me how to stand in the gap. In Jamaica, everyone knew my father. My father had stopped for so many people on the street to help them if they have a flat tire or something wrong with the car, or if they were selling raffle tickets. I mean, just the whole gamut of helping folks that I've really, tried to inculcate and be a man that I think my father would be proud of. The other person is the captain of our running team, Mr. Terry Love. And, since I've been with our running group, one of the things with Terry, the whole mantra of no man left behind, he really personifies it. He's one of the strongest runners in our group. He's almost always finishing behind some of the guys at the front, because he's always going back for someone. He's a guy who's always stopping to take pictures for guys, or going back and checking to make sure that some of the slower runners are keeping up, or that no one has fallen off. He's the guy who is always bringing out refreshments so that in the hot days, guys who might have forgotten to have this stuff. He's a really caring guy who looks out for the group. It's just a lot of the things that he personifies are some of the things that, as brothers, again, in our relationships, that caring, that that knowing that you're strong, but not always needing to show that you're stronger than everyone else by, say, beating them, but being able to show that strength in other ways, I think really makes him valuable to the group and valuable to himself and his family in other areas. But again, and I guess before I go, I definitely appreciate the opportunity to meet some of the brothers here, hear some other perspectives. Can definitely say that I'll take some things away from this that, to think about and also to inculcate.
Thank you. And I'm so glad you picked two people, because they both mean something so different to you, and that you're able to share it with us. One of the people I want to recognize that you mentioned, though, is your dad. That is so beautiful for you to recognize him, because so many young boys and girls don't have that role model. And he was just going about his normal, what he felt should be right, stopping to help someone. And that stuck with you for years. So it just shows the impact that we have on each other as brothers, as sisters, and as husbands, as fathers, and as mothers as well. And just teachers and coaches and nurses. You never know that simple thing that you've done. So thank you for recognizing your dad, because so many of us don't have that. And that's a whole nother show about breaking cycles, because if you didn't have it, then you have to learn to be one so that your kids can in turn be proud of you and be able to come on the Caribbean Edge and say that about their parents. So thank you. So important. I have a lot of respect for parents that are just amazing. And it's oftentimes it's the little things that they've done that stay with us for a lifetime. You did say something about men run, and you wanted to talk about that, right?
Yeah. So the running group that I'm in is called Black Men Run, and their motto is a healthy brotherhood. Which is really, and it resonates around so much of the health issues that we have in the Black community as a whole, but particularly around Black men. Heart disease is the number one cause of death of Black men. 44% of Black men, will die from some form of cardiovascular disease. Men above the age of 40. If you take out kind of some of the younger generation that we do have, other issues with. But so the group is founded around, getting guys out, whether it's whatever your pace is, if it's a walking pace, if it's a jogging pace, if it's a running pace, if it's Usain Bolt type pace. We have guys who run at all paces and all sorts of events that are focused around getting them out, getting them moving, getting us healthier to try and improve at least this facet of an area where we see challenges existing with Black men. So we have chapters around the country. There are chapters in Atlanta. We were actually down in Atlanta doing a Black race called The Race in Atlanta. Well, they did a virtual last year with COVID, but then the 2 years prior, and it's one of the few places that you'll see so many Black people in a running event. It was 98% us, which was, you just don't see that anywhere else. And BMR, Black Men Run, was instrumental in showing up at that event. So for the brothers, if you're interested in getting out, putting a few miles on the pavement, if you look up Black Men Run on Facebook, they'll pop up there for you. And anyone else who is interested, I think it's a real good, strong network of men who are trying to improve in that facet of their life.
Wow, thank you. Extremely important. Amazing. I'm glad I remembered to ask you that. Health is so critical for us, especially now. I can speak to that because I was so active before COVID. And now I am like beating myself up a little bit about not being as active, because the sport that I enjoy the most, volleyball, I don't get to play it as much. So it's like that mental shift to try to find something else, to eat better. And like you said, it's good to know that you do have a support system out there that men can tune and check them out. So thank you for sharing that with us. Very good information, especially now with COVID-19 going on and beyond that, how important our health is. So that's certainly brotherhood, growing that brotherhood and sharing that knowledge and empowering your other brothers to take care of themselves. Thank you, Ron. Pleasure. AJ?
All right, someone who I want to acknowledge. Here we go. One I would like to acknowledge as someone who mentored me is a former pastor in Savannah, Georgia, by the name of Kenneth Roche. He was instrumental in while I was in college down in Savannah. Really didn't have a great relationship with my father. The extent of my father's relationship was, hey boy, turn the TV. That was it. So when I went to college, I really didn't understand what is this about being a man? How do you do this thing? How do you relate? And so while I was in college, I got hooked up with a great church, and he really took me under his wing and held me accountable. Oh my gosh, he stayed on my neck. He really did. But I really appreciate him for that. And another one, it was actually a young man by the name of Kenneth Beck. Both of them are named Kenneth. Kenneth Beck is actually younger than me, but he's also one of my strength and conditioning coaches and fitness. And it just became a real brother because even though I'm the oldest, I never had anyone really to relate to being the oldest because and so somebody I started mentoring, but then what happened is the principals, he started mentoring me and being a brother to me so that we can bounce off ideas. He would tell me the truth. Your workout is crap. I mean, he would just stay on my health. Just like I said, he really got me fitness ready, but it was also a part of the mental ready. Emotionally, he started checking me about my nasty attitude. I'm like, who is this young guy, you know? But like I said, we became brothers, and I just think that's one of the aspects of brotherhoods that help. It's not just emotion. Brotherhood should also check you financially in every area of your life. And you might have a brother in different facets, but they're supposed to be able to check you and say, hey, that's looking sloppy over there. You need to tighten that up, So thank you for having me on the show. I really enjoyed it. And just like I said, I learned a lot from the brothers just talking there and just having this forum to be able, as Black men, to be able to say, hey, open and honest and transparent that, I got issues, you got issues, but how can we help you with these issues as brothers?
Wow, two great examples. Such a pleasure having you too. Just from a religious standpoint and having someone that can stand strong with you with Christian beliefs and set you straight when they need to, someone that you obviously respect a lot. So I can see why you would select him. And then that example of a younger person too, it just shows you how we all impact each other, and age doesn't really matter. Sometimes the person you're mentoring turns around and starts mentoring you. That's just how big and beautiful this world is, because we can all learn from each other. I learned so much from my kids because the parenting I had is so different than the parenting I have to do. Island parenting and US parenting different. So I had to learn those strict rules that I grew up with, breaking those cycles and making sure my kids have a healthy life. So good to know your young people are also impacting us and that brotherhood as well. Great examples. And thank you both for the people that you recognize tonight for being in your life. Thank you. And Mr. Corey, Coach Corey, tell us about if you have anyone you'd want to recognize and any parting words for us.
Yeah, just more. Do more of forums like this. I've dreamed of having a men's forum like this. I'm very proud of what Mr. Rohan does. It's very awesome. Big ups to you, brother. I'm gonna go off path a little bit because again, I want to recognize my wife. She's not a brother, but she's a sister, and she's an empath. She opened me up to deeper thinking about people outside of myself. The simple things such as, what can I help you with? Just thinking about other people, and we as people don't do that enough anymore. Everything is militant and about us getting to where I got to get to. As Mr. Rohan, I was just had cheer bumps on my skin when you talked about never leaving the man behind. That goes really, really deep into what we do. But again, it's not just a run. It's not just a football game. It's life, and life, you don't leave a man behind. You just don't do it. It's devalue, not a popular thing, but it is a thing. My wife had opened me up to talking about and understanding other people's feelings. Most of all, understanding myself, because until you understand who you are and where you come from and what makes you tick, you don't really know how to deal with other people. You be invalidating people's feelings. They say, well, you got an attitude. You look frustrated. Well, I'm not frustrated. That's the defense mechanism. Ask the questions. What do I do to make you feel like I'm upset? Understand. And we sometimes get defensive as opposed to understanding. And I want to recognize her for that, because I would have probably never gotten there. I learned a lot from situations that I've been put in that test me, in situations where I have to think about others, you know, other people's needs outside of my own.
Wow. Thank you. Wow, you've all like impressed me so much, and the viewers so much tonight by your choices of who you recognize and everything that you've had to say about brotherhood. This show actually went beyond brotherhood for me. It was just about life and people and humans and what we're here for and can give back to the world. So I thank each of you for everything you've said tonight. I do want to close the show with a quote from Martin Luther King Jr., which says, "The richer we have become materially, the poorer we become morally and spiritually. We have learned to fly in the air like birds and swim in the sea like fish, but we've not learned the simple art of living together as brothers." So as you all said, the conversations continue. We need to have more shows like this. Corey, I want to meet your wife, because she sounds so interesting. So I certainly need to have her on this show. But I thank you all tonight. I thank the viewers as well. Please share this episode, and we thank you for tuning into the Caribbean Edge. Have an amazing week. One love.
Thank you so much.
Thanks,
guys. Appreciate y'all.
Take it easy.